Before we begin, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this is not just another Bible story. It is the wild, dramatic, and deeply human journey of a man who began life as a heel-grabbing trickster and ended up wrestling with God himself. The story of Jacob is one of conflict, deception, visions from heaven, love triangles, betrayal, blessings, and destiny. And if you think your family is complicated, wait until you walk a mile in Jacob's sandals, because his story is going to show you that God can use the broken, the scheming, the fearful, and the flawed to build a nation, change history, and reveal his purpose. So sit back, open your heart, and let us travel back to the very beginning where it all starts, not with Jacob, but with a promise. For God had made a covenant with Abraham that he would become the father of many nations, and that through his descendants all the families of the earth would be blessed. And Abraham had a son named Isaac, the child of promise, born to him and Sarah in their old age. And Isaac grew up and married Rebekah, a woman of beauty and prayerful character. And after many years of barrenness, Rebekah too cried out to the Lord, and he opened her womb, and she conceived twins. But from the start something unusual stirred within her, for the two boys struggled in her womb, and when she inquired of the Lord, he told her, "2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the older shall serve the younger." And when the time came to give birth, the first came out red and hairy all over, like a cloak, and they named him Esau. And after him came his brother, grasping Esau's heel with a tiny but determined hand, and they named him Jacob, meaning heel-grabber or supplanter, a name that would foreshadow the twists and turns of his future.
As the boys grew, Esau became a man of the field, rugged and wild, a skilled hunter, the kind of son a father like Isaac favored, while Jacob was quiet, dwelling in tents, perhaps more thoughtful and calculating. And Rebekah loved Jacob, creating a divide of favoritism that would only fuel the fire of rivalry later on. One day, Esau came in from the field, exhausted and famished, and he found Jacob cooking a red stew, and he begged, "Let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted." And Jacob, ever the opportunist, saw his moment and said, "Sell me your birthright now." And Esau, driven by his stomach, replied, "I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" And so Jacob made him swear, and Esau sold his birthright, the privileges of the firstborn, the greater inheritance, the leadership of the family, for a bowl of lentil stew. And Jacob gave him bread and the stew, and Esau ate and drank and went his way, despising his birthright, a decision he would later regret bitterly. But the story does not stop there, for the time came when Isaac, now old and nearly blind, felt the weight of his own mortality and desired to bless Esau with the special patriarchal blessing reserved for the firstborn. And he called Esau to him and said, "Take your bow and quiver, hunt some game, prepare a savory meal for me, such as I love, and I will bless you before I die." And Esau went out into the field, unaware that Rebekah had overheard everything. Rebekah, determined to see God's prophecy fulfilled, and also deeply partial to Jacob, quickly called her younger son and told him the plan: to disguise himself as Esau, bring food to Isaac, and receive the blessing in his brother's place. And though Jacob hesitated, fearing discovery, Rebekah assured him and prepared the food, covering Jacob's arms and neck with goat skins to mimic Esau's hairy skin,
and dressing him in Esau's garments to carry his scent. Jacob brought the food to his father and lied boldly, saying, "I am Esau, your firstborn. Eat and bless me." And Isaac, suspicious but deceived by the touch and smell, finally blessed Jacob with a powerful and irrevocable blessing. "May God give you the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth, abundance of grain and wine. Let peoples serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you." Moments later, Esau returned with his food, ready for his blessing. And when the deception was discovered, Isaac trembled violently, and Esau cried out with a bitter cry, "Bless me, even me also, O my father." But Isaac could not undo what had been done, and Esau wept, begging for some blessing, and Isaac gave him a lesser word, that he would live by the sword and serve his brother, but eventually break free. From that moment on, Esau burned with hatred for Jacob and planned to kill him after Isaac died. And so Rebekah, learning of Esau's fury, urged Jacob to flee to her brother Laban's house in Haran, until Esau's anger cooled, and Isaac, before sending Jacob away, formally blessed him again, this time knowingly, charging him not to take a Canaanite wife, but to go to Padan Aram and find a wife from among his uncle Laban's daughters. And Jacob left, alone and exiled, with the blessing of heaven and the wrath of his brother at his back. As he journeyed, night fell, and Jacob stopped in a certain place to rest, placing a stone under his head, and as he slept under the open sky, he had a dream, a vision so vivid and holy that it would mark him forever. He saw a ladder set up on the earth, reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, "I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you, and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I promised." And Jacob awoke, shaken and awestruck, and said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it." And he was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." And he took the stone he had used as a pillow, set it up as a pillar, poured oil on it, and named the place Bethel, meaning house of God. And he vowed, saying, "If God will be with me, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat, and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone shall be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will surely give a tenth to you." And so Jacob continued on to the land of the east, still alone, but now marked by a dream.
carrying a divine promise not just for his future, but for the generations that would follow. And as he neared his uncle Laban's territory, he came to a well in the open country, where shepherds were waiting with their flocks. And he asked them, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" And they said, "We know him." And even as they spoke, Rachel, Laban's younger daughter, approached with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. And when Jacob saw her, something stirred within him, something strong and instant. And he rolled the stone from the mouth of the well and watered her flock, kissed her, and wept aloud. He told her who he was, and she ran to tell her father. And Laban ran to meet Jacob, embraced him, and brought him into his house. And thus began a new chapter in Jacob's life, one filled with love and labor, deception and destiny, and a set of relationships so tangled and intense that they would shape the rest of his life. And so Jacob, the man who had fled his homeland as a deceiver and wanderer, now found himself in the home of his uncle Laban, a man who was just as shrewd and calculating as Jacob himself. And though Laban welcomed him warmly at first, it did not take long for the business-minded uncle to see an opportunity in his clever and strong nephew. For after 1 month of dwelling with Laban and working among his flocks, Laban said, "Just because you are my kinsman, should you serve me for nothing? Tell me what your wages shall be." And Jacob, who had already fallen head over heels for Rachel, Laban's beautiful younger daughter, did not hesitate, saying, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." And the agreement was struck. And the years passed quickly in Jacob's eyes, for his love for Rachel made the days seem light, and the thought of marrying her fueled his heart with joyful anticipation. And after the 7 years had passed, Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, that I may go in to her, for my time is completed." But Laban, the master of trickery, had his own plan, and instead of giving Rachel to Jacob, he prepared a feast, veiled Leah, his older daughter, and brought her to Jacob in the night. And in the darkness and the secrecy of the wedding traditions, Jacob did not realize the deception until morning. And when he awoke and saw Leah beside him, his heart surged with fury and betrayal, and he stormed to Laban and said, "What is this you have done to me? Did I not serve you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" And Laban, with no shame, answered, "It is not so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week with Leah, and then we will give you Rachel also, in return for 7 more years of service." And so Jacob, still burning with love for Rachel, agreed, and he completed the bridal week with Leah, and then Rachel was given to him as a wife also, and he served Laban another 7 years, and just like that, Jacob found himself married to 2 sisters, one he loved deeply, and one he had never intended to marry, and the rivalry between them was fierce and painful, and though Jacob loved Rachel more, God saw Leah's sorrow and opened her womb, while Rachel remained barren. Leah bore Jacob a son, and named him Reuben, saying, "The Lord has looked upon my affliction, now my husband will love me." But the love she craved never came, and so she bore another son, and named him Simeon, saying, "The Lord has heard that I am hated." And again she bore a son, and named him Levi, saying, "Now this time my husband will be attached to me." And yet again she bore a 4th son, and named him Judah, saying, "This time I will praise the Lord." And she ceased bearing for a while Rachel, consumed with envy, cried out to Jacob, "Give me children, or I shall die." And Jacob, frustrated, replied, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" And in desperation, Rachel gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob as a surrogate, and Bilhah bore Dan and then Naphtali, while Leah, not to be outdone, gave her servant Zilpah to Jacob, and Zilpah bore Gad, and then Asher. And the battle for Jacob's affection was waged in the cradle, with children used as tokens of worth and validation, until one day Leah's womb opened again, and she bore Issachar, then Zebulun, and finally a daughter named Dinah. Then at long last God remembered Rachel, and she conceived and bore a son, and said, God has taken away my reproach. And she named him Joseph, saying, May the Lord add to me another son. And though the family was large and growing, the tension between Jacob and Laban only intensified, for Jacob now desired to return to his homeland, and he said to Laban, Send me away, that I may go to my own home and country. But Laban, aware that Jacob's presence had brought him great prosperity, begged him to stay, saying, Name your wages, and I will give it. And Jacob proposed an unusual deal, that he would take only the speckled, spotted, and black sheep and goats as his wages, while the rest would belong to Laban. And Laban agreed, thinking it unlikely that Jacob would prosper. But Jacob used his knowledge of breeding and the blessing of God to multiply his flocks exceedingly, and he became very rich, with large herds, servants, and camels. And Laban's sons grew jealous, accusing Jacob of stealing their father's wealth.
And the Lord said to Jacob, Return to the land of your fathers, and to your kindred, and I will be with you. And so Jacob gathered his wives, his children, his servants, and all his possessions, and he fled from Laban's household without telling him, crossing the Euphrates and setting his face toward Canaan. But Laban, when he heard of it, pursued Jacob for 7 days, and caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead, and there the tension finally boiled over. But God had appeared to Laban in a dream, warning him not to harm Jacob, and so when they met, instead of violence, there was a tense conversation, and ultimately a covenant was made, and they set up a heap of stones as a witness between them, calling it Mizpah. For Laban said, May the Lord watch between you and me when we are out of one another's sight. And they parted ways. But as Jacob approached the land of Canaan, his thoughts were dominated by one looming figure, Esau, the brother he had deceived, and whose rage had driven him into exile. And though decades had passed, Jacob feared his brother's wrath had not cooled, and so he sent messengers ahead to Esau in the land of Seir, instructing them to say, Thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban, and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants and female servants. I have sent to tell my lord, in order that I may find favor in your sight. But when the messengers returned, they said, We came to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him. And Jacob's heart melted with fear. In desperation, Jacob divided his camp into 2 groups, hoping that if Esau attacked one, the other might escape. And he prayed, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, Return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do you good. I am not worthy of the least of all the deeds of steadfast love and all the faithfulness you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become 2 camps. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother. And then he sent gifts ahead, hundreds of animals, spaced out in waves, to pacify Esau, saying, I will appease him with the present that goes ahead of me, and afterward I shall see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. And as night fell, Jacob arose and sent his family and possessions across the stream of Jabbok, and he remained alone. And in that solitude, the strangest and most mysterious moment of his life unfolded. For a man appeared and wrestled with Jacob until the break of dawn. And this was no ordinary man, but a divine being, perhaps an angel, perhaps a manifestation of God himself. And they wrestled fiercely through the night, neither yielding, until the man touched Jacob's hip and dislocated it. Yet Jacob still clung, refusing to let go, saying, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And the man said, What is your name? And he said, Jacob. And the man said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with man, and have prevailed." And Jacob asked, "Please tell me your name." But the man replied, "Why do you ask my name?" And he blessed him there. And Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered."
And as the sun rose, Jacob limped on his way, forever changed, not just physically, but spiritually. For he had contended with heaven and lived to tell the tale. And when Esau finally appeared, with 400 men surrounding him, Jacob bowed to the ground 7 times, approaching his brother in humility and dread. But Esau ran to meet him, embraced him, fell on his neck, and kissed him. And they wept, and the years of bitterness melted away in a flood of reconciliation. And Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company I met?" And Jacob answered, "To find favor in your sight, my lord." And though Esau refused the gifts at first, Jacob insisted, saying, "Please accept my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me." And Esau accepted, and they parted peacefully, and Jacob journeyed on, eventually settling in the land of Canaan. And though many trials still awaited him, including the sorrow of losing his beloved wife Rachel in childbirth, and the anguish of believing for years that his son Joseph had been killed, Jacob, now Israel, would become the patriarch of the 12 tribes. And his life, though marked by struggle and deceit, would ultimately be a testimony to the relentless mercy and transforming power of God. And so, the story of Jacob ends, not with a perfect man, but with a renamed one, not with a flawless journey, but with a redemptive destiny, because God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called. And Jacob, the heel-grabber, the deceiver, the dreamer, the wrestler, became Israel, the one who strives with God and walks with a limp into legacy.